In this session, we're talking about one of the thorniest issues that we have to contend with our divorce, and that is dealing with your former spouse. This is an area that's filled with landmines. However, you can manage it with a few tips and techniques and that we go over in this session. So I want to share with you a story. It was probably about 6 or 8 months after my divorce was final. And it had been a contentious divorce, as I think most of them are. And I would say that when that judge stamped our divorce decree final, my former spouse and I were not friends. We were enemies. And so that attitude, that posture permeated our relationship after our divorce. And so while we weren't necessarily arguing or fighting after our divorce, it was kind of the Cold War, okay? And there was a lot of anxiety and tension each time we got around, and I'm sure the kids could sense that. So I remember one day I was going to drop the kids off to their mom. We were meeting in a parking lot. We had this one place that we'd meet and we'd drop off and pick up the kids. And as I'm driving them to this drop-off spot, I remembered it was their mother's birthday. So I was kind of coaching the kids, hey, make sure you wish your mother a happy birthday. Even though in my heart of hearts, I wasn't feeling a lot of joy over that fact. And I wasn't planning to do the same because that really wasn't the nature of my relationship with my former spouse at this point. I said, as little as I could to her, and it was all business. It was, just whatever it was about the kids, and that was it. So I pull up to the parking spot. We're waiting, and their mom pulls up, and she gets out of the car, and the kids get out of the car. And before the kids could say anything, her eyes met mine, and I just blurted out, "Happy birthday." And her face, her demeanor just visibly softened. A kindness came over her eyes, and she looked at me and she just said, "Thank you." And that was the beginning point of a change in our relationship, a softening, a melting of the ice. That Cold War evaporated after that. And while we didn't become the best of buddies, certainly our relationship got much better. And the kids could sense that, and certainly that helped them because their mom and dad were getting along with each other. So in this session, we really give you some tips and techniques on how to manage your relationship with your former spouse, how you deal with your former spouse, because especially if you have kids, you're going to have to deal with them for a long period of time, okay? So one of the first things you need to do is set boundaries, okay? You're not a doormat. And I think the minimum that you should expect in this relationship after divorce with your former spouse is respect on both sides. You have to respect them, they should respect you. And so by setting boundaries on the type of behavior, the type of communication that you're going to accept or not accept is very important, okay? And you land on the common ground of respect. And that's what you communicate with them. So if they're not being respectful, you need to say to them, look, I want to get along with you. We need to co-parent together. We need to, be able to cooperate with each other. So I'm just going to ask that you respect me, and I promise that I will work to respect you. So you're speaking to me like that, or you're doing this certain thing is not being respectful, and I'm going to ask you to not do that any longer. Okay, so that's setting a boundary in place, and you'll be amazed on how effective that is. Now, you need to model the behavior that you expect, and by you modeling that behavior, you're actually training your former spouse on how you want them to treat you. Okay, so very important. Even if after you ask them to respect you, if they're not doing that right away, you certainly continue to respect them. And what you'll find in most cases is that sooner rather than later, they'll pick up on the fact that you're not returning the jab, you're not, arguing with them, you're not being disrespectful, you continue to be respectful. And they will assume that behavior, okay? So you may have to train your former spouse, if you will. The second thing that I want to make you aware of is that, find the most effective way to communicate. You can avoid a lot of problems by choosing the method in which you communicate. So, it's not uncommon that verbal communication doesn't really work, because that can often, result in an argument. You're on the phone, or even if it's face-to-face, just that creates too much tension, too much anxiety, too many raw feelings that is a trigger point for an argument, okay? Whereas other forms of communication, like texting or emailing, create enough space, okay, that tends to make an effective means of communicating. But you have to experiment with this, okay? And you'll find the one that's most effective. I think most people find email effective because unlike sending a text, it provides a buffer of space, okay? Not only a buffer of space in writing it, okay, but when you send it is important too. So you may write the email, and you may be upset and angry, but if you wait, okay, we have a 24-hour rule, right, with anger, and go back and read it 24 hours later, more often than not, especially if you're angry, you'll see how, no, that probably wasn't the right tone or the right choice of words. So it gives you that buffer that can avoid a lot of communication problems, all right? So find the right means to communicate. And then the third point I want to make is to be charitable. Now, for many of you, you may be listening to that and making you sick to your stomach. You can't imagine being charitable to this person who you're angry with, this person who has hurt you so much, this person that may have hurt your children. It's hard to be charitable, but remember a few things. One, your kids are watching you, okay? And they're watching how you're interacting with their mom or their dad, okay? And so do it for them, all right? Especially if you have kids. Do it for them because they're watching. And then also remember that our Lord challenged us to love our enemies. He said it's easy to love your friends. That's, anybody can do that. What he's calling us to do is love our enemies, okay? Now, I'm not suggesting you view your former spouse as an enemy. However, the point is, you're called to be charitable to those that you don't like or that challenge you in some way, okay? You're called to be charitable. So my challenge to you is to ask for the grace, particularly from the Blessed Mother. She's a great model of charity. Why? Well, she had to watch her son be killed. Okay, and yet she was still charitable to everyone. And so she was our model of charity for all people that were friends to her and people that were not friends to her. So ask her for the grace to be charitable to your former spouse. I promise you that it will pay huge dividends to you in your ongoing relationship with your former spouse. And if you have kids, it's a great gift for your kids as well. I hope that helps. God bless you.